The survival of our species has always depended on advances in food and agriculture.
There are 7.3 billion people on the planet.
The world's population is expected to top 9 billion in 2050.
Climate change is going to scramble this whole how are we going to feed the world debate.
This is all about companies controlling our future.
So, amongst all this conflict and confusion, how do we make the most informed decisions about how we feed ourselves?
We are at a pivotal time in the history of this island. I have a bill before the council that would restrict the use of GMOs. The point is that we have an opportunity to act, to do something. We would make history on this island. Let's make this island a model for the rest of the world. Thank you. I am concerned about some of the health issues related to GMOs on a number of different levels. My approach was, hey, we're going to close the door on this island. You don't come here until we have more information of what is safe.
There's a lot going on in this island. This is ground zero for the entire world in terms of experimentation of GMOs and seed production. This is a really rare opportunity to get shots of people spraying.
We as a society do so many stupid things, and I feel like the GMO is a thoughtless, invasive species that is being brought in here.
And if they're safe, great, bring your jobs. You know, the more the merrier. If you're helping the island, if you're really feeding people, then you're more than welcome. They're not farmers, they're mad scientists.
With this conflict over genetically modified organisms, Hawaii has become ground zero of a battle for how to feed the world sustainably.
A long day of testimony on 2 proposed laws prohibiting genetically modified organisms on Hawaii Island.
Before voting, the Hawaii County Council tried to get answers about any safety concerns related to GMOs.
Okay, I'm calling this meeting back to order.
Aloha, Mr. Smith, or is it
Aloha.
Dr. Smith?
Jeffrey's fine.
Have you ever heard of the rainbow papaya?
Oh yes, I'm very aware of it. Eating papaya that's genetically engineered might cause you to get more colds, more susceptibility to hepatitis or HIV. And again, these are completely backed with peer-reviewed published studies. We've actually put the population at risk.
Here in Hilo, we have Michael Shintaku, who opposes the bill.
Most of this testimony is very emotional. Everybody's saying that GMOs are dangerous, but they're not. There's not a single credible study.
It's caused by people who are intentionally making other people scared.
For the people who make their living growing GMOs, you know, the Hawaiian, everybody here is very giving, and they would probably bend over backwards to help you burn those papayas and grow something decent.
The face of this issue is not the papaya. You know, the face of this issue is this huge multinational companies. That's what you guys are dealing with.
One of the criticisms that I receive, okay, Margaret, you're anti-progress, you are anti-science. What I say to that is, you know, who's really being unscientific?
A study by French molecular biologist Gilles Eric Serlini provides solid evidence showing rats fed GMOs sprayed with glyphosate, the toxic Roundup herbicide, developed serious tumors that took over their bodies.
The biggest risks associated with today's genetically engineered crops, these so-called Roundup-ready crops, is this significant increase in pesticide use.
There's remarkable correlations between the use of glyphosate on GMOs and the rates of autism in America, also of obesity and diabetes and Alzheimer's. All of these things correlate very, very strongly. So I think eventually the only solution that's actually going to work in the long run is to go organic.
Thank you.
How many scientists are here in the audience? Please raise your hand. With degrees. I just want facts, true facts, without the fear, without anything else, facts, and we can make the best decision when we have facts. I'll yield.
I'm Dennis Gonzalez, who actually very proudly developed the rainbow papaya.
If you say you don't want to use GMOs because you don't believe in manipulating plants the way that process does, I respect your belief. But now, if you say GMOs are not safe, I would say, now, show me the data.
There's absolutely no proof to the health hazard. Absolutely no proof. Talk is very cheap, but we did the research, and I stand by it.
Thank you. I was a former biology major, so I have some expertise in this area. There is no middle ground. You're either going to be GMO, allowing a GMO, or you're going to be organic and not allow GMO. They cannot coexist.
Thank you very much. Then, Madam Clerk, on the motion to approve Bill 113, Draft 3, at second and final reading.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
You have 6 ayes. Thank you. Bill 113 is adopted.
Motion to adjourn.
You know, I said, you're not going to get away with it if I can help it. And we stopped it.
Hawaii's ban on genetically modified organisms and the frightening evidence presented during testimony made headlines around the world. It was also hailed as a rallying cry by the global leaders in the movement against GMOs.
I think your island is truth, speaking to the world that GMOs are an extension of pesticides, not a substitute and alternative to it.
So don't tell me Monsanto can't be beat. They've been beat over and over and over again. And we can do it again.
Organic isn't the ceiling. Organic's the floor. And above that, we build this new house of food.
This is actually a movement which is spreading across the country.
All the way from Moscow, Margaret. Why this ban?
We want to protect and future generations from the contamination.
Do not want any more GMO species on this island. Period.
You could get your kids sick!
But what if, while trying to do the right thing, the council got it wrong?
It's very frustrating to see people who don't even know what this breeding method is making choices to avoid it based on information that's not supported by the scientific literature.
You might think the 3 most terrifying letters in the English language are GMO.
I wondered how many people really know what they are.
What does GMO stand for?
I don't know.
Man. It's genetically I don't know, what is it?
I know it's bad, but to be completely honest with you, I have no idea. A GMO is really an undefined term. It's a genetically modified organism, and I might argue that a Chihuahua and a Great Dane are genetically modified relative to their ancestor, the wolf.
A GMO is an organism that's had its genetic makeup altered by the insertion of DNA that's from outside of its normal genetic makeup.
So what does that really mean? At its most basic, genetic engineering, or as some say, GE, is a modern form of breeding, which farmers have done for thousands of years to select for the most desirable traits and provide food for a growing population. In fact, it's hard to call any of our food natural. Conventional as well as organic crops have all been genetically modified through selective breeding.
The goal of genetic engineering is to add useful traits into food.
Traits that currently help with weed, insect, and disease control in staple crops that are in billions of meals consumed every day. In fact, genetic engineering has been part of our lives for longer than most are aware.
Probably the most familiar is insulin, genetically engineered insulin. It's been very important for patients suffering from diabetes.
Biotechnology is kind of used in almost all cheese making now. So if you're eating cheese, you're eating a product of biotechnology.
Scientists are also working to genetically engineer seeds that aid humanitarian causes, such as vitamin enrichment in crops like golden rice.
Golden rice is rice engineered to have high levels of beta-carotene, which gets turned into vitamin A. And it's been proposed many years ago as a solution for vitamin A deficiency in the developing world.
In addition to helping millions of children stave off potentially fatal vitamin deficiencies, scientists are also developing crops with a tolerance for drought, such as rice, corn, and wheat, which could prove essential in the face of climate change. And disease resistance to save crops like the Hawaiian papaya from being completely wiped out. In fact, the farmers who grow this rainbow papaya convinced the Hawaii Council to amend their ban on GMOs.
Papaya industry farmers flooded the council chamber.
To insinuate GMO is somehow unhealthy is just not true.
Right now, people are trying to grow organic papaya.
Why don't you do it?
I'm not a farmer.
Why don't you do it? So stop telling me how to grow.
I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you. I need your help.
Those of us who live on the Big Island should be well aware that agricultural biotechnology has saved the papaya industry on this island.
It's been reported that Councilwoman Willie plans to amend the bill further.
And that approach is the way I've done it, which is basically to grandfather in, number one, the papaya as an industry. It's impractical to just say no at this point.
If there are such horrible health issues related to GMOs, why even exempt the rainbow papaya? Why not try to get it off your island? You must have thought about that.
I did, and there was a lot of criticism of me and my final bill.
If we as a body pass this, it shows that we think that all GMOs are wrong, except this.
Are you worried that rainbow papaya could cause somebody to have...
I don't know. You know, I have no idea.
This exempts everyone. However, we think it's wrong.
Well, what's the number one?
You know what? You keep focusing on papaya, and I exempted. I exempted it, so it's like you're home free. So I don't. At the same time, I wanted to get a bill passed.
It's done.
While the evidence presented before the council seemed strong and scary enough to ban all GMOs, they exempted the rainbow papaya, a genetically engineered fix that helped this cherished crop come back from the dead only a short time ago.
20 years ago, the Big Island papaya industry had been thriving. Growers were shipping 60 million pounds of papayas a year. But then insects began spreading a devastating virus called ring spot to nearly every papaya tree on the island. In about 3 years, the trees were dead. The industry literally wiped out.
Nothing stopped the spread. Not physical barriers, not pesticides, no methods, conventional nor organic, could halt the virus.
As a scientist, when nothing seems to be working, you have to think of alternative solutions. And I had this idea. The idea of vaccinating a plant through genetic engineering. What we did is we took that hypothesis, we isolated a gene from the pathogen, we cloned the gene using recombinant DNA technology. We used a gene gun to introduce our clone genes into the cells of the papaya, and it doesn't work the first 2 or 3 times. So you have to repeat these experiments, and it took us 7 years of research. We continue until we're satisfied that we have the correct sequence. Now this is the scientific method, and you have to verify your results. Years later, our results were dramatic. The non-genetically engineered papaya is not growing. The genetically engineered papaya is growing. So we concluded that this genetically engineered papaya that we had was resistant. We released seeds to the growers for free. Essentially, we saved the papaya industry. That's it.
Today, the industry is thriving, exporting rainbow papaya to countries all over the world. But as more and more people enjoyed this genetically engineered fruit, a vocal movement began to rise up against the very process that saved it.
Here they come, genetically engineered tomatoes.
We're creating a whole new species, one that's never existed on Earth before. So some would say, you've created a monster, a frankenfood.
These foods can create new allergens. They can make a non-toxic food toxic. They can lower immune response. They do lower nutrition.
The gap between the public and science on the safety of GMOs is the largest gap of any politicized scientific topic.
I have always been careful not to say this is dangerous food, and I don't believe the fear-mongering has helped.
Okay, good. So that's a good control.
Yeah,
I think it's a really important concept of scientific consensus. So you never trust one scientist or one opinion. You look at the consensus of experts in the field over 20, 30 years.
After 30 years of testing every GMO product currently on the market, and based on the results of nearly 2,000 experiments, the foremost scientific institutions in the United States and around the world have concluded all criticisms against GMOs can be largely rejected on strictly scientific criteria.
I don't think that genetically modified organisms are dangerous to consume. We don't have any evidence that the products that are on the market now have caused particular harm.
No adverse health effects attributed to genetic engineering have been documented in the human population.
I looked closely at health, and then I went into environmental effects, and I just kind of ran out of things to worry about.
The science is quite clear. Crop improvement by the modern molecular techniques of biotechnology is safe. While each new product should continue to be assessed on a case-by-case basis, scientific consensus tells us the current GMOs on the market are safe to eat and safe for the environment.
There's absolutely no proof to the health hazard. We did the research, and I stand by it. We gotta congratulate Margaret Wheely. We were absolutely outmaneuvered.
Snookered.
Because
That's right.
all the time was given to Jeffrey Smith, and he ranted and raved.
Eating papaya that's genetically engineered might cause you to get more colds, more susceptibility to hepatitis or HIV.
What Jeffrey Smith just said was convincing if it was true, but just lied to scare people.
Jeffrey Smith is a very innocent-looking person, and he can say things, wild and crazy things that are astounding to hear with a very straight face.
We now know that GMOs, when consumed by human beings, might switch on or shut off our genes. It's a theoretical possibility that has never been evaluated.
Things like that. So that's Jeffrey Smith, and I do know he has a very wide audience.
Do you consider yourself a scientist?
I'm not a scientist.
Are you a doctor?
I'm not a doctor.
Aloha, Mr. Smith. Is it
Aloha.
Dr. Smith?
No, Jeffrey's fine. People refer to me as doctor all the time, and because they get it wrong. I don't call myself a doctor. I don't call myself a scientist, and I use my non-scientist as to an advantage because I get to ask a lot of dumb questions and hear more and more people's assumptions, and then I can record them.
They were very smart and they were clever about misinforming people.
There's remarkable correlations between the use of GMO and the rates of autism in America.
She showed one slide over the past 20 years or something, the incidence of autism in the United States and how that went up. And then she superimposed on that the use of Roundup in the United States and how it went up. It was almost exactly a perfect match. And she said out loud that I've never seen a better correlation.
Remarkable. I've never seen such a good correlation coefficient as you see between those two things. So I think the only solution is to go organic.
And then if you look at consumption of organic food, even a better match. So this is autism prevalence in the United States and organic food sales.
So organic food sales cause autism.
Must cause autism. It became really clear then that Brenda Ford and Margaret Willey were not interested in gathering facts. They were interested in getting their fellow county council people scared.
Bill 113 is adopted.
The general nature of these people, they probably all vote Democrat like me. They're kind of left-leaning like me. They probably think global warming's a problem, we should take care of it like me. They probably agree with me on most things.
And that is another reason why this battle over GMOs is so complicated and confusing. Both sides seem to be fighting for the same worthwhile goals. Safe, abundant, nutritious food for all.
3 generations against GMO. Excellent.
Thank you.
Fewer toxic chemicals used on farms around the world. And a more sustainable food system.
These are the victors. In 100 years, when they look back and say, how did we save the planet? There you go.
But there are real-world consequences to acting against scientific consensus that can be felt far beyond the shores of Hawaii.
Now, a Hawaiian island has passed a law banning companies which produce genetically modified food from operating on its territory.
Marin County in California, a GMO ban was put on a ballot and passed.
I'm not here as an expert, and we all have the right as Americans to know what's in our food.
Vermont passed a bill mandating genetically modified foods must be labeled.
Scotland is to ban genetically modified crops.
I have come to the conclusion that there is a justifiable reason to believe that this genetically modified maize presents a danger to the environment.
Growing genetically modified food is banned across the EU.
Today, 150,000 farmers in India have committed suicide in areas where they have to buy the seed from Monsanto.
A devastating drought hit southern Africa. The American government sent a shipment of food aid containing GM corn, and Zambia refused it.
Available data shows that GMO foods can cause harm, making reference to the Seralini report.
The government has decided that all GMO food imports are completely banned.
Uganda doesn't need GMOs.
The fears and decisions about GMOs in Hawaii reach all the way to Uganda in East Africa, where bananas, similar to the Hawaiian papaya, are threatened to be wiped out by a terrible disease.
Most bananas in this region are now faced with the worst bacterial disease so far, known as banana xanthomonas wilt.
The disease has had a devastating impact on banana cultivation, forcing some farmers to abandon their crop.
Amatoka ago bannayuganda wano yemmere yaabwe endoozi ekyasinze.
Currently, nearly half of all banana plants in Uganda have been wiped out by banana wilt, threatening the food security of 14 million Ugandans, more than a third of the population.
Many farmers realized there was a strange disease wiping out bananas. We did not know how to go about it, but to cut down infected plants, but the disease kept on spreading.
That is poverty, that is famine.
Famine.
My name is Emmanuel Mamugera. I practice integrated organic farming. I also teach farmers how to do the same.
Right now, banana wilt is not affecting me, but it has affected many people. Banana bacterial wilt can spread from one farm to another at any time. That's why I teach these farmers.
You can never get any disease, like banana wilt or something.
My dear, you have to guard against it. Don't let people come into your garden. Don't share tools. Like you see, that is a tool rack. All the tools we use in this garden, we never use them anywhere else. If you must, you disinfect. All these are preventive measures. They're not really curative measures.
Kati bw'ogenda okukitemamu okisangamu ebintu munda ebya black ebirabika nti ne kati era wetuli kitukosa kubanga nkugambye nti kyolabye eri wano nali nzija buzi oba nsanze kamu nentema nentwala nenfumba nebukola kinebulya naye olw'okubeera nti kirwadde ate ne wano nga nkugambye nti kaba kakaluba kalinga muti.
She could not get food for herself or for her family, so she's devastated.
Osobola okiteetema n'okiteekako omuliro n'okitwala n'okiteeka awantu n'okikola ki n'osimawo ekinnya n'oziika n'omala n'okola ki.
Or once someone is hit, you have to just cut down, burn, and wait for maybe 6 months to a year for it to get out of the garden.
Nga amapaapaali tetusobola.
I would call it the Ebola of the banana. It comes and wipes away the whole plantation.
To fight the devastation of banana wilt, scientists in Uganda and Kenya are working on a genetically engineered fix similar to what was done in Hawaii with papaya. Except their work is done behind a locked gate and is currently prohibited from being released to the public.
Hi, I'm Leena Tripathi. I'm leading the transgenic research in IHTA, and my focus is on disease and pest resistance. So we find out that there are some resistant genes in sweet pepper. These are the genes we are using to transfer resistance from sweet pepper to banana.
You must be aware of people. They don't want what you are doing to reach farmers because they think your work is against humanity.
This message is brought to you by Action Aid Uganda. Did you know that genetically modified organisms pose health risks such as cancer, infertility, etc.? The National Agriculture...
I read about rats getting cancer due to GMOs. Definitely did scare me.
Even in Africa, fear of GMOs is being fueled by a discredited study on tumor-prone rats.
Here's a picture of some of these rats. So, Jeffrey, why, how can it be this information is being ignored?
They've got bad science down to a science. How many people have seen the pictures of the rats? It's not enough. You gotta see these tumors.
A study by Giles Eric Seralini showing rats fed GMOs.
Enormous effects on people. This one image was really responsible for the GM import ban here in Kenya.
Making reference to the Seralini report.
The Seralini, the infamous Seralini study. So this is a study where a scientist, and he said, I have rats that have cancer. Yeah, he had a press conference, but he demanded that no scientist be there to question his results.
If you look closely at the study, Seralini used a strain of rats that are prone to develop tumors no matter what they eat.
The conclusions that were drawn could not be warranted by the data that was obtained.
From everything I've read, there are serious issues with the Seralini study. I've talked to people I respect who look at the science and say, statistically, this actually doesn't hold up.
And the paper was retracted. Every scientist around the world who looked at it said the data was inadequate.
Even though Seralini's paper was retracted, the effect of publishing that original paper still lingers and lingers and lingers. And it's going to take a long time to go away.
It's much easier to solve fear than it is science, and I think we need to talk about science and discuss these things in the open.
Hi, I'm Alison. I'm a professor at University of California in Davis.
Oh, good. Don't you think putting all these chemicals in our food and our animals isn't dangerous?
Well, I think that, this particular sign, I think, is referring to the Seralini rat study, I'm guessing, and it's been retracted from the scientific literature. And this topic of GMOs is a bit like playing whack-a-mole. And so there's all these different issues that pop up.
That over 250,000 Indian farmers in the last 10 years or so have committed suicide.
And one of the issues that pops up quite a lot is the farmer suicides in India. And so the farmer suicides, I know I've looked at the scientific literature on that, and there are reports that show that there has been no increase in farmer suicides. When you actually look at the data around that, the rate of suicide before the introduction of GM crops and after hasn't changed. It's a matter of debt, and it's not actually associated with the use of GM technology. It's really confusing causation and correlation. And I was wondering if there's any application of GMOs that you would be supportive of. So, for example, if a developing country developed its own insect-resistant or disease-resistant cassava, for example, developed by the researchers in that country, not associated with Monsanto or any company, and gave that to the people to use, would you be supportive of that conceptually?
I definitely will look at all that, and I appreciate your feedback on this.
Well, and I'm happy to talk to you, and I guess what frustrates me is I think this technology has potential, and yet it gets kind of mixed up with a lot of other concerns about multinational control.
Yeah. Maybe it's not an and/or.
I agree. Can we agree on that? All right. Okay. Here's my card. It was nice talking with you, ladies.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, Alison. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I wish that we could have a discussion about what it really is that concerns people, rather than trying to scare the bejesus out of people.
The protests are spreading.
I hate the British government, I hate the American government, but this is about money, this is about power.
Corporate greed.
Corruption, money and politics.
All they create is money for themselves.
From oil companies denying climate change, tobacco scientists saying cigarettes are safe, to the pharmaceutical industry sometimes overcharging us for drugs we don't need. Corporate greed and bias have broken the public's trust.
People won't take what scientists say on trust, what governments say on trust. We all think that there's some kind of corporate influence, that the Monsantos are the ones who are really running the show. And there's good reasons why people don't trust corporations to run things.
Monsanto is the devil, pretends he's a scientist.
Monsanto's the devil.
The pest we need for this predator, evolution with a kiss. Monsanto is the devil, and the devil must be slain. Devil Monsanto, listen up, yeah!
Monsanto is one of the most hated companies in the world. How did that happen? In their early history as a chemical company, they manufactured several products that turned out to have unintended health and environmental consequences. To combat malaria-transmitting mosquitoes during World War II, Monsanto and other companies manufactured DDT, which helped save millions of lives. But, as environmental author Rachel Carson pointed out in her landmark book, Silent Spring, there were hidden dangers with the toxicity and overuse of DDT and other chemicals. Monsanto was also one of 9 companies commissioned by the US military to make Agent Orange to help clear away the jungle during the Vietnam War. But it contaminated soil and water and was linked to a variety of birth defects. With the public rightly questioning the overuse of toxic chemicals in farming, Monsanto looked towards a new technology, genetic engineering, to help farmers in the timeless struggle against weeds and insects. And to help recoup the billions of dollars spent developing this technology, Monsanto focused on commodity crops, patenting seeds for corn, soy, and cotton. While they helped invent the technology, they didn't invent patents. Almost every agricultural advance in both conventional and organic farming has a patent behind it. The first GMO Monsanto introduced was to help farmers protect their crops from insects by using the naturally occurring insecticide known as BT.
BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, is a bacterial disease of caterpillars.
Organic farmers use that. We use that.
By Monsanto engineering the Bt into the seed, the need for spraying was greatly reduced.
Bt crops have reduced insecticide use tenfold in the United States and have had huge impact in developing countries.
The other GMO Monsanto introduced helped farmers control weeds by providing seeds tolerant to their herbicide, glyphosate, also known as Roundup. These seeds became known as Roundup Ready seeds. They could be sprayed with Roundup, which would kill the weeds, but not harm the crops.
Let me tell you how overjoyed we were when Roundup Ready seeds became available. It was a gift from God. I mean, it was that big a deal.
With the GM technology, I saved so much. I managed to send my son to school. He has a degree today. He graduated last year. And most of the money came from the GM technology produce.
Both Bt and Roundup Ready GMOs became huge successes and are currently being used by over 90% of corn, soy, and cotton farmers in the United States and around the world. And with this success, Monsanto made and continues to make billions of dollars.
They came up with a trick, and so now you can spray as much herbicide as you want. Good for the company, they sell the seeds, and they sell the herbicides.
These war criminals who became poison criminals and are now GMO criminals.
This brings us to one of the major questions in this debate. Have GMO technologies like Bt and Roundup Ready increased or decreased the use of harmful pesticides? Agricultural economist Charles Benbrook authored a landmark study on the subject of GMO crops and pesticide use.
This technology led farmers down a path that now requires more pesticides by far than what they did in 1996 when the technology was first adopted.
There's a lot of discussion about whether the amount of herbicides or pesticides have increased with the advent of GM crops. Some of the people, Dr. Benbrook would be one example, I'll say, well, pesticide use has gone up, and then he gives you their statistics for the use of Roundup. The amount of pesticides is sort of beside the point. The question is, are they more harmful? Are they more dangerous? You have to point out that glyphosate, of course, has very, very low toxicity, lower than caffeine or salt.
Ironically, because of the more harmful herbicides glyphosate replaced, pounds up doesn't equal toxicity up.
I often tell people, the people fierce in attacking GE, I said, you know, if you won and you succeeded in banning this technology, let us say you got your dream, where would we be? Well, we would be back to 1996. This was not a golden age in American agriculture.
The weeds are still going to grow, so you've got to do something about the weeds. We probably go back to the more toxic ones that were being used prior to the adoption of Roundup Ready crops.
And if you look to the details past page 1 of Benbrook's study, even he acknowledges more benefits than dangers from these technologies. In light of its generally favorable environmental and toxicological properties, especially compared to some of the herbicides displaced by glyphosate, the dramatic increase in glyphosate use has likely not markedly increased human health risks. So when all the data are considered, GMO technologies like Bt and Roundup Ready have decreased the use of harmful pesticides. Simply put, their net impact is better for the environment.
It's very difficult to pay Monsanto a compliment. It's like praising witchcraft. People can't imagine that that company could ever do anything which would benefit the environment, but that's what's happened.
A Dr. Oz alert. The new GMO pesticide arms race doctors are warning against.
I'm very concerned that I'm at the beginning of a catastrophe.
So safety has to be sacrificed in order to maximize profits.
But most of the public, expecting to hate anything coming from Monsanto, championed Benbrook's study as peer-reviewed scientific evidence that GMOs cause harm.
And it was that perceived umbilical connection between the GMO and the chemical and the pesticide, which I think is stuck in people's heads.
While there are many bundled concerns about Monsanto as a company, To be concerned about the safety of their GMOs is to be misinformed.
Yes, let's go ahead and go in and sit so we can get good seats.
The world that you live in when you're a young environmental activist is a very black and white world. You know, there's the bad guys out there, and the bad guys are the corporations, they're the police, they're the state. And there was no compromise. You didn't talk to the corporations. You stood your ground and you battled them.
Biotechnology is going to continue to be important. I would be the first to tell you, as really the guy who helped start the GMOs and the biotechnology, that it's an important tool. It's not the only tool that will be key.
As we launch these technologies, farmers around the world were excited about the benefits that these products provided. Clearly, you know, looking back, we should have also been much more, you know, transparent in reaching the public. And that, as I look back, I wish that was something that we would have done earlier. And now we know that that was a mistake. And in the meantime, I think that void of information got filled by folks who really don't understand the technology and had a very different message.
Good. You got a question over here, sure.
Yeah. So I wondered what Monsanto's doing now that Roundup has been found to be linked to birth defects, fatal kidney disease epidemics, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, brain cancer. How are you trying to remedy this toxic landscape that you've created? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. None of the studies that you quoted are accurate. They're all pseudoscience, and I'd be happy later to take you through each one and explain to you the fallacies and the misinformation that they're not recognized by any government body or agency as being valid studies. And so the importance of the conversation is this. Everybody is entitled to their opinions and to their emotions, but in the end, we have to be grounded in the real science. Otherwise, we will be aimless in our decision making, and that's true whether we're talking about vaccines, whether we're talking about climate change, or whether we're talking about GMOs. So I just urge you to think through to the real science.
Do you and your family eat the crops grown by your company?
Absolutely.
Good. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks.
I think trashing crops is effective in the sense that it sends a huge message to everybody.
Angry farmers destroy an experimental rice paddy in the Philippines.
Greenpeace objects to all genetically modified plants.
Some people would call it vandalism. We called it decontamination because you were stopping genetic pollution spreading across the countryside. Our intentions were honorable. What we were trying to do was to build a more sustainable farming system. We were trying to eliminate chemicals from our food supply. We were trying to protect the future of the planet and the health of our children. As an activist, you tend to take these things as a point of faith. So it begs the question, how do you know that GMOs are the enemy? What if we got it wrong? What if eliminating GMOs was not the way to achieve these ends? Now, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, here and up front, I want to apologise for having spent several years ripping up GM crops, and that I thereby assisted in demonising an important technological option which can and should be used to benefit the environment. As an environmentalist, I could not have chosen a more counterproductive path, and I now regret it completely. So, what happened between 1995 and now that made me not only change my mind, but actually come here and stand before you today and admit it? Well, the answer is fairly simple. I discovered science, and in the process, I hope, I'm becoming a better environmentalist. Before I changed my mind on GMOs, I'd spent 10 years developing a career as a science writer, mostly on the issue of climate change. Every book, every article, everything I wrote, I wanted to have peer-reviewed scientific references. So I knew that that was based on the best scientific data available. Whereas on the GMO issue, I was taking the opposite perspective. I was arguing against the scientists without any scientific data.
He says he's junked ideology in favor of hard science. Is it really as simple as that? And, you know, your intellect presumably hasn't changed very much, and if you were so wrong, so incompetent, so shallow in the past, why should we believe you're any different now?
Well, all the more reason for me to change my mind in response to changing facts as I saw it. Science should be about changing your conclusion on the basis of objective evidence. But understanding that is tough, you know, that's not how we humans are wired to think. You know, we're wired to make our minds up and that's it, then we've made a decision. And that's going to be largely emotionally based. But so learning to think like a scientist and learning to take positions which are amenable to change was the most difficult thing for me to do as an environmentalist.
When it comes to complex issues that affect food and farming, everyone struggles to make the right decisions. For some, their decisions come from a scientific assessment of risks and benefits.
I wanted to be an organic farmer because, number one, the produce is much more profitable, and number two, it's much more sustainable.
I'm proud to be an organic farmer. Instead of using chemical pesticides, organic agriculture uses integrated controls.
Organic farming was developed around the world for many reasons: to curb the use of synthetic chemicals, help soil fertility, and ideally, improve the overall sustainability of our food production.
Although organic agriculture is a good model, there are aspects that prevent it from becoming the sustainable agriculture. The challenging part for organic is to provide food on a very large scale. It's very difficult to do.
Organic farming has taught all of us about so much over recent decades. But if this is an organic planet we're going towards, you would see all the rainforest destroyed. You'd have to double or even triple the amount of land area which is being cultivated just to feed the current population, let alone a population of 9.5 billion. So it would be an ecological disaster.
And so we need to use every kind of technology and strategy related to agriculture that we can. And genetically engineered crops have achieved some of those goals. So the papaya ring spot virus in Hawaii, organic practices just weren't going to control that. Whether it's small farmers in Africa or it's large farmers in the US, we need strategies to solve both their problems.
Zen Honeycutt from Moms Across America.
I met the CEO of Monsanto, and I said, we have science that your products harm our children. And just consider if you're wrong, the repercussions to your company are enormous, and the repercussions to the world are huge. And he said, well, if you're wrong, you're scaring an awful lot of people. And I said, if I were wrong, and I'm not, then only repercussion to the people is that they're eating organic. And there is nothing wrong with organic food. It is perfect the way it is.
Zen Honeycutt scares moms into believing that they're harming their children by feeding them GMOs.
We're going to go and see if we can have a little conversation with Zen. I think maybe it'd be a good idea to talk to her in person, let her know that we're human and let her know that we know she's human too, and maybe it might improve dialogue.
Studies have to be reproduced to be meaningful, okay?
Yeah.
And how many studies have been reproduced that show harm from GMO?
Why would you subject your child to any harm if there's even one study that shows harm? Why would you subject them to that?
There are studies that show organic food cause harm. Why do you subject your children to that?
No, organic food is the way God made it.
No, it's not.
It's not
actually
harmful.
God didn't make organic food. Organic is a modern concept.
No, it's not.
How
much money are they paying you guys?
$0. I'm a mother and activist. How much money is the organic industry paying you?
Nothing.
Well, she's a true believer.
You do not get to call me a bad mom.
A concerned mom named Zen Honeycutt started Moms Across America. So when did you first become concerned that your kids were being affected by these pesticides?
Well, Dr. Oz, for a long time I didn't know that pesticides might be affecting my children.
In fact, they had rashes and severe allergies for years.
So what tests did doctors do to identify that there were pesticides involved with this process?
Well, my doctors told me that they would not test for glyphosate because there was no reason to. But we finally found a private lab that would, and we had shockingly unacceptable results.
With no scientific oversight, run through a mail-order lab using random urine and breast milk samples sent in from website followers, moms across America posted their results, not in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, but on their own website. A biologist trained in analyzing breast milk was attacked online when she tried to point out the study's many failings.
I'm a human milk and lactation nutritionist. I was looking at milk composition. What I think that they don't realize is I did not have a dog in the fight. The worst ones for me, being a mom, are the ones that suggest that somehow I could be bought off and that I'm killing babies. You know, and how can I sleep at night and that I have blood on my hands? I mean, are you kidding? I think that there are a lot of families, they want good information. It's just that from what I see now, there's so much propaganda out there, it's hard to know what's real and what isn't.
What do you think drives Zen Honeycutt, or what's her motivation?
I think her motivation is the same as ours. I really think she honestly thinks what she's doing is going to save children, but it is so not based in reality that it's not, you know, if anything, I think she's doing a lot of harm.
So what happens a lot in this particular discussion, groups that are opposed to this technology kind of suggest that this GMOs cause cancer. And as a mother, it just broke my heart. That parent now is wondering what they did wrong. You know, every parent, you know, wants to blame themselves when something tragic happens to their child. And I think I can speak to that because I actually myself had a stillborn child, my daughter. When you're faced with that kind of tragedy, it's very easy to want to blame something for causing it. You look at, you know, everything you ate and everything you did and how could I have stopped that tragedy from happening? But you know, as time has gone through, I've realized that, you know, it was an unfortunate tragedy that had no cause. There was no reason that she was stillborn. And I'm very passionate about trying to ensure that, you know, we don't have parents blaming themselves or feeling guilty because they're, you know, feeding their kids GMOs. And it infuriates me when these groups use tragedy to advance their cause in the absence of any scientific evidence.
I'm aware that when I give a talk about GMOs to moms with kids that have diseases or disorders, they may be putting together that they may have actually hurt their child based on what they ate. Cancer, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, etc. So I carry a huge responsibility knowing that the truth about GMOs can generate fear, anger, and sadness.
There are lots of people in our society who will prey upon people, and they appeal to their fears and worries, and they give them answers, absolute answers, to where, like so many things, like most things in life, there are no absolute answers.
I think as a mother, one of the big catalysts is the messaging that's coming across is that GMOs equal pesticides. And people get that pesticides kill things. And when mothers and consumers understand, they're like, whoa, there's a really good reason to eat organic.
Do you think some in the organic natural foods industries use fear to sell products?
Oh, you know, again, the organic industry is got a lot of different players in it, and yeah, I think some particularly activists. Jeffrey Smith is an example of a number of anti-GMO activists that are very entrepreneurial.
Store books.
I wrote them and I made them. The movie Genetic Roulette has been the fastest conversion tool we've ever found to convert someone to a non-GMO diet.
You know, I think people like Jeffrey Smith use fear and really go beyond science.
You can't trust the chemicals and the food-like substances that are being pumped into our food because there's only one benefit to them. It's to them and not us. So who can you trust? You can trust Mother Nature.
Okay, Food Babe. Thanks for stopping by the Food Babe shop. Below are food items that I enjoy on a daily basis. Organic raw almond butter. This shop contains affiliate links for products Food Babe has approved and researched herself. And Food Babe will automatically receive a small referral fee.
Frankly, I trust the social media, like blogs like, Vani Hari's or other moms that even just do a post. I trust what they say more than most medical doctors, more than the CDC, more than the FDA, more than the USDA, more than the EPA. That's real. I don't need a scientific study for that. I don't need a doctor to tell me that.
Okay, I can buy Restore for gut health. Restore has been tested for and shown to support resilience of cells to the most widely used herbicide in the world, glyphosate. To put it simply, Restore works.
I'm deeply troubled by the sort of erosion of the integrity of science and the whole debate about genetically engineered food. The point, counterpoint, he said, she said that's going on. I don't think that the science supports such a wide array of opinions.
People may say, oh, you shouldn't trust or everything that you read on Facebook or whatever, but what other motivation would that person have?
When a patient would come in to see me and they'd say, well, what do you think I should do about this problem, doc? I wouldn't tell them what I believe. I'd tell them what we know that has been shown to be helpful and what has been shown to be harmful. When you look at the science, we know that it's important to eat whole foods, to eat lots of fruits and vegetables and whole grains. We don't know that you're going to be healthier if those products are organic. So please buy fruits and vegetables and whole grains, and don't worry whether they're organically produced or not organically produced.
It's like the issue of vaccinations, really. You can try and have public information campaigns, but it's much easier to scare people than it is to reassure them. And the misinformation originates in the rich world, and it's damaging the interests of the poor world.
We do everything similar to what farmer does. No fertilizer, no pesticide, no insecticide. See, the control plant has the disease and the control plant completely wilted, but our transgenic lines has no disease. So actually all our genetically modified plants all has the 100% resistance.
It was quite amazing to see Lina's GMO plants that were resistant to the banana bacterial disease.
So feel free to touch, and even the fruits you can, if you can touch them.
I got to know that actually GMOs are not bad like they used to say.
Emma, do you think this crop integrates well the system you have been practicing?
Even better. So it does well. I wouldn't mind growing a GM crop in my garden.
To me, I would think the transgenic is ready. What makes it not ready?
Yeah, it's the biosafety law, which is not in place. So I don't know why they don't consider. Maybe we have to change their perception for that, you know. The government has to be forced to put the law in place.
Yeah. When I saw Francis's face, she also could not believe that there was an answer to her problem. And she was like, can you give us these plants yesterday. Bibika. But it was so sad. She could not get the GMO plants that she had to wait for another 2, 3, 4 years for the research to be approved.
This is as close to being a scientist as I'll ever get. All of you have put so much time, effort, your life's work, basically, is this plant that people are having these big debates about. How frustrating is that for you?
What I see is how far we have come, you know. Means like we have now a solution for the farmers. So, you know, that good enough to motivate me to do something more, to convince the people who have negative about this technology, give them the scientific facts. And I feel like we can convince them.
I am not convinced that you can convince them. One of the things that has been most difficult for me is understanding how human beings make decisions. We don't make decisions based on facts. We make decisions based on our gut. And there's, you know, it's some combination of intuition and emotion and affiliation. I need to ask you, when was the last time you changed your mind? Think about it. In the last year, have you changed your mind about an issue of substance?
They haven't done anything for Africa. The lame shall not walk, the blind shall not see, the hungry shall not be fed.
Technology doesn't have a moral valence. You know, it's how the technology is used. You know, is the hammer used to pound in nails and build a house for the poor, or is it used to bash in the head of your neighbor?
Are now struggling with even the conventional system of producing food. Climate change is a reality. You know, I'm awaiting another GM seed for drought tolerance. Yeah, I'm waiting really impatiently because we are losing here.
This has been about 10 days of drought and then a month of recovery. Our engineered lines recovered, as you can see, much better, while the background control line, they did not recover, they died, or M202.
Wow. They're incredible. If we can reproduce this in the field, it can have a huge, huge effect for farmers.
Genetic engineered rice, been stopped. No commercialization. It's gone. Then we stopped genetic engineered alfalfa. We sued them, and we beat them. Those are gone. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen.
Americans, beware. Please be informed that whenever you say no to GM technology, you are suppressing Africa. South Africa and the rest of the continent is being left behind.
With the global divide over GMOs getting more contentious every day, the respected debate series Intelligence Squared invited top experts on both sides for a civil discourse in front of a live audience.
Okay, we're letting everybody get settled in. We have 4 debaters, 2 teams of 2, arguing it out over this motion, genetically modified food. And is this a good thing, this genetic engineering? Is it a safe thing? Is it necessary? Well, those questions sound like the makings of a debate, so let's have it. Yes or no to this statement: genetically modify food. Chuck, you are at Washington State. You are known for your research on pesticide use in particular. You've debated with us before, actually. You were a proponent of organic food, and you won overwhelmingly. So are you feeling lucky again tonight?
I am, John. We're well prepared, Marty and I, and since we have the facts and science on our side, I think we'll be fine.
Part of me was reticent to do it because I thought it was a bit of a no-win scenario in the middle of New York City, and also sitting alongside Rob Fraley, who obviously is with Monsanto, and just all of the baggage that comes along with that particular company.
Here to argue for the motion, please welcome Robert Fraley. He is Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at Monsanto. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Fraley. I'm hearing hissing. I would appreciate the audience silence the hisser.
I absolutely think that trust is the central issue when it comes to Americans' relationship with food.
First of all, GMOs are not the Holy Grail. What they are is an important tool. They've enabled farmers to use safer and more environmentally friendly chemicals. GMOs, are they perfect? Absolutely not. They need to be regulated. They need to be managed wisely, like any technology.
I was there in the early days when Monsanto came up with its products, and compared to the vision, the early vision, it's a big disappointment.
GMO technology often gets conflated with Monsanto and Big Ag, but it's actually a breeding tool, one that can be used for many purposes. All of these GM applications focus on controlling disease with genetics rather than chemicals, an objective that I would argue is compatible with agroecology, sustainability, and feeding more people better with less environmental impact.
Rob and Allison, if all of what you said was true, I would be over there at your side of the table going at it with poor Marty all by herself. Rest assured, there is no consensus about the safety of GE foods.
At some point, consensus doesn't mean everybody agrees. It doesn't mean that there's a complete 100% alignment, just like there isn't on global warming. But the science speaks for itself here, and the science has reached a consensus on this.
We live in an age of so much information. The individual sees one article say one thing and another article say the other thing, and the individual can only weight these the same way, and that creates dissonance. That creates a lot of confusion, and dissonance and confusion create distrust.
John asked about to open up a discussion of the environmental impacts. When you spray one herbicide over and over again on weeds, they're going to develop resistance.
Okay, so I want to take that to Rob Fraley.
You've all heard of antibiotic resistance. It's a problem, right? You're aware of it. So what should drug companies do? Should they not develop new antibiotics just because there's become a resistance to an antibiotic? Absolutely not. Roundup controls hundreds of weeds. In this country, 12 of them have become resistant. It still controls hundreds of weeds. It needs to be used effectively, and Chuck, you were one of the first ones to point out that we should actually use combinations of herbicides, and that's what growers are doing today, and that's one of the benefits of being smarter and stewarding these products better.
Yes, that's true. I mean,
The challenge of feeding the world's hungry people is not one that is met by production of any kind. I mean, if you want to feed hungry people around the world, I can give you a list of 10 things to do. You can build roads, you can raise their incomes, you can change the role of women, you can help people make their own decisions about what they want to grow and help them grow it.
I absolutely agree. It's a complicated question that will take all of the tools we have. So
Rob,
couldn't agree more.
One part of, I think, of Margaret's argument is that the focus on genetically engineered crops sort of sucks the oxygen out of the room.
I think the debate around GMO crops sucks all the air out of the room.
The GMO debate is not about GMOs at all at this point. GMOs are a metaphor for our relationship with food and our food system.
And here to give his closing statement against this motion, Chuck Benbrook.
It's really turned into kind of an arms race with weeds, using herbicides as the sole hammer. And in 2014, USDA data shows pretty clearly it's about 230 million pounds of glyphosate was applied. Even though it's generally regarded as a relatively safe pesticide, There's reason for serious worry here.
Sometimes the risks that concern people and the risks that kill people are entirely different. For too long, the debate over the merits of genetically modified food has focused on unrealized hypothetical risks and has been conflated with the use of pesticides. It has not addressed how GM could help with the very real risks faced by the hungry and malnourished. There are costs associated to excessive precaution. Vote yes for GM food.
This is obviously a very, very passionate debate. If you side with this motion and with this team push number 1 against the motion and this team push number 2.
Confirmation bias is people's tendency to only assimilate information which confirms what they already believe. And everybody does it. I mean, confirmation bias is why right-wingers watch Fox News and left-wingers read The Guardian online. It feels more comfortable to read information which tells you that you're right. You know, confirmation bias has a function, almost in terms of mental health, keeping you feeling sane and like you understand how the world works. But confirmation bias is also very dangerous because it means that we don't listen to evidence which challenges our beliefs.
Let's look at the first vote. In the first vote on the motion, genetically modified food, 32% agreed, 30% were against, 38% were undecided. Those are the first results. Remember again, the team whose numbers changed the most between first and second will be declared our winner. Let's look at the second vote. The team arguing for the motion, their second vote was 60%. They went from 32% to 60%. They picked up 28 percentage points. That is the number to beat. But let's look at the team against the motion. Their first vote was 30%. Second vote, only 31%, only a 1% move. That means the team arguing for the motion, genetically modified food, has carried this debate. Our congratulations to them. And thank you from me, John Donvan, and Intelligence Squared US. We'll see you next time.
Money is behind the whole thing for Monsanto and Syngenta, Dow, DuPont. Those are all.
I don't know. He's so charismatic. He's just so good.
He was good.
Good.
You convinced my husband and I.
Well,
good job.
Thank you for coming. What did you think of it?
It's the first time I've seen science win a debate. But I was also struck by just how weak the arguments are for the antis. There was nothing even remotely persuasive. The thing that we've been trying to stop for 15 years hasn't worked yet. Now, what kind of argument is that?
There's really no food that's 100% safe, and even the turkey dinner you had for Thanksgiving had some risk associated with it, and so you have to kind of manage that risk. And so
I didn't quite get your position. Are you for herbicide-tolerant crops? Would you support them? Do you think if this debate was just for or against, not the other apps?
You know, Humboldt County just banned genetically modified crops. Yeah. So I was talking to a farmer up there who grows Roundup Ready corn. And I said to him, what are you going to do now that it's been banned? And he said, well, I'll obey the ban. I'll grow conventional corn, and I'll go back to using a more toxic herbicide. That is the consequence of that ban.
There are good applications. I'm not debating you on that. Some good ones, and maybe some good ones by, but that app is a very bad app. Support the good apps and say, you know, guys, this is not an application we should use.
They haven't done anything for Africa. The lame shall not walk. The blind shall not see. The hungry shall not be fed.
When Andrew Kimbrell acknowledged that there were good apps for GMOs, either that was a slip of the tongue or that was an incredibly meaningful admission, because I've never heard anyone of his stature in the anti-GMO movement admit that this technology can ever have a beneficial purpose.
Well, let me ask you this. Is it true or false that this technology has increased the use of pesticides?
It has decreased the use of pesticides.
That's where you guys don't agree.
That's what the science says.
So that's what I'm going to look into. So that right there, I can investigate that.
And papaya doesn't use anything.
The papaya is pretty impressive. So everybody, for you recording, this is something I'm going to look into. Does it increase or decrease the use of pesticides? Don't forget, look at the lens, not at yourself.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate
yes.
it. Pleasure to meet you.
Yes.
Selfie with the science guy. So excited. My kids love him, and so, well, because we're all kind of science nerds, right? So that's going to really amplify my status at home, I think, and maybe make them understand what I was doing here. So.
Thanks so much for your support, dude. Really, really appreciate it. I'm so excited about heavily into meat because I've been kind of captured by GMO stuff for, it seems like, forever.
Well, happy we could throw you something new to work on.
Yep.
While Benbrook's side lost this GMO debate, his influence and his story didn't end there.
I'm deeply troubled by the sort of erosion of the integrity of science and the whole debate about genetically engineered food.
One study, co-authored by Washington State University researcher Charles Benbrook.
Over the years, Benbrook has become the go-to scientist for the anti-GMO movement.
The paper has been downloaded over 224,000 times.
His work has been quoted, shared, and retweeted around the world.
Bill 113 is adopted.
To help support arguments and actions against this technology.
Our major finding is that while all milk is healthy, organic milk is even healthier.
While also favoring organic as the perfect alternative.
Vermont lawmakers have passed a bill mandating that genetically modified foods must be labeled.
I've been hired as an expert witness by Vermont to defend the statute, and I'm whispering here because I'm Mike.
Yes.
That's supposed to be semi-confidential.
We might be funding your testimony. We made a contribution to that defense fund.
Through a public records request, the New York Times discovered that Benbrook's studies may not have been as independent as he portrayed.
What I've seen is that he is willing to actually take funding to provide particular outcomes, and that's really the antithesis of what a scientist is prepared to do. Scientists will usually, if they're funded by industry, it's a unrestricted grant. There's no outcomes expected. There's certainly no predetermined conclusions as to what the study is going to say. That's not how science works, because the data informs your opinion, not who funded you.
Some of the important funders would be Whole Foods, Annie's, Organic Valley, Stonyfield.
Do you think some in the organic or natural foods industry have used your work to help them sell fear around GMOs?
I think certainly to some extent that is how the work that I did was utilized. But the way I feel about it is, why shouldn't the organic industry have the same right as Monsanto or Syngenta or ADM or Kraft Foods? Don't you think every company on all sides of this debate will use whatever science they think supports their public posture and their messaging? Of course they're going to use it.
But are any of those companies trying to convince me that organic food will give my kids cancer?
No, I'm not saying
that's
that.
what I'm saying.
Many scientists and science journalists spoke out against the bias and misleading information in Benbrook's work. The profit motive is a double-edged sword. It can lead to innovation, as well as temptation.
When you look at the people out there who are pushing against GMOs and who are pushing for GMOs, there are real marketers on both sides. And what's interesting to me is that you can get past those people. You know, there are scientists who their incentive is to be impartial and to weigh the evidence and to figure out real solutions and not to push an agenda.
After years of March Against Monsanto pushing false fears around GMOs, a group of young scientists launched a counter-protest. March Against Myths.
3, 5, 7, 9.
Science is completely counter to being an activist. I mean, as an activist, you want to get the megaphone and you want to say, these people are doing, they're damaging the planet, they're cutting down the trees. You don't want to stand up there with a megaphone and say, this is a very subtle issue, there's lots of complications and we need more objective evidence. When did you ever hear, well, what do we want? We want peer-reviewed data which objectively defines the nature of the problem.
When do we want it?
When do we want it? Well, at least 3 years hence, when people have had the time to examine the data.
What do you want? Safe technology. When do you want it? We already got it.
There's all of these myths that are being promoted by March Against Monsanto, and what can we do about it? They are good people. They want the best for themselves, they want the best for their children, they want the best for the world. They have good intentions, but they don't have the facts. If you turn in your protest gear, we will buy you a beer.
I'm not fighting for GMOs. I'm fighting for the ability to use science to make the best decisions that we can. If you throw science out, then there's nothing. There's just kind of an amorphous blob of competing worldviews.
Emma and her husband Washington are expanding their role as educators by building a school to teach all about food, farming, and agriculture.
We visited a farmer whose farm was dying because of banana wilt, and she was actually dying with it. They get a gene that is resistant and put it in the matoke. And the matoke will stay matoke.
No banana wilt.
With no banana wilt. Does it make sense for that thing to wither? Because you are so against it, but then at the end of the day, we don't have food? What does food make us? If you don't have food, then you're going to steal, you're going to kill someone. A lot of crime. All incorporate science. So we urge you to tell your relatives, your dads, your aunties, maybe your brothers and sisters in parliament, let's grow food to feed Africa and feed the world.
In view of the above findings, the task force recommended that the ban on GM foods be lifted on a case-by-case basis.
Personally, I believe biotechnology is the way forward for this country and for the globe in terms of food security and the issues dealing with climate change. Thank you.
Both Kenya and Uganda are close to allowing genetically engineered crops, like the wilt-resistant banana, on a case-by-case basis. But there are still many people and organizations successfully spreading fear and misinformation about this technology. The Hawaii County Council's ban on growing GMOs was overturned by the state. But, led by Andrew Kimbrell's Center for Food Safety, it is still being contested in the courts.
You know, at its core, science is an investigative journey, no matter where it ends up.
There's a chapter in there which I'm going to revise. I spent some time on it, and I'm very excited.
Wait, which chapter is this?
Well, you can stay tuned, but it's about genetically modified food.
Oh.
I went to Monsanto, and I spent a lot of time with the scientists there, and I have revised my outlook, and I'm very excited about telling the world. When you're in love, you want to tell the world.
Change your mind when the data shows you.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Let's change the world.
Let's do it.
GMOs in development around the world include peanuts that are now allergy-free, safe for all children to eat. Oranges that can resist the invasive citrus greening disease, which has wiped out over half of all orange trees in the United States. And mosquitoes that can help stop the spread of malaria, dengue fever, and even the Zika virus.
I don't think people understand how much science is involved in making good food available.
So, while we may have had a crisis of trust, when we come to our next evolutionary fork in the road, how do we decide which way to go? What kind of future will we have if we turn our backs on credible evidence, sound science, and repeatable studies? What impact will that have on ourselves, our planet, and our future?
A quote in the New Yorker said, "Don't listen to Jeffrey Smith, he's a ballroom dance teacher. Actually, I'm a swing dancer, thank you."
Well, my wife always tells me that I'm incredibly unpersuasive because I'm always punching people in the face with how wrong they are and how my facts are the right facts and so on. And she keeps saying, I used to do this when I was on the anti-side of the argument as well. So you're just doing the same thing now. You're just telling everyone they're wrong and shouting in people's faces. You just change your mind completely. Why do you expect anyone to believe that? And she's probably got a point.
More than 100 Nobel laureates have signed a letter calling for Greenpeace to end its campaign against genetically modified organisms. Richard Roberts, the campaign's organizer and 1993 Nobel Prize recipient, told the Washington Post that the environmental group's stance against GMOs is damaging and anti-science.
The good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe in it. You see, that's the... I'm just saying.
Networking, replaced by social interaction, virtual reality becomes sub-reality. People make money off of being good at life in a virtual game. Oh man,
I saw the tweet out there that wanted to know how much Monsanto paid you for changing your mind.
Well, I confess, two things. I ate in the cafeteria for free, as I understand it.
Yep.
And you guys gave me a ride from the airport. That's true. Right. I didn't, but other than that...
So we can put that myth behind us.
Yes, I paid my own way.
Oppression has been forgotten. Religion is dead. Everyone is logical, but they don't know why. Oh man, the future.
You know, when people talk about doom and gloom, we're gonna have so many people and we're gonna be falling off the island, our continents, which have so many people. That's baloney. First of all, if we all had a party, all of the people in the world had a party, we would fit on the island of Hawaii. All of the people in the world right now, if we had a party.
39 more U.S. presidents until a woman finally makes it into office. Not that it'll matter. A year later, a revolution happens and the war for hunger and poverty ends.
Some people believe that an organic farmer and a geneticist represent polar opposites of the agricultural spectrum, but that's not true, and we both have the same goal, which is an ecologically based agriculture.
We met at another farm. Eventually, there was enough going there to get married.
Oh man, the future! People create drugs to trick the body into thinking it's getting the nutrients it needs to survive. Food no longer necessary. Oh man, the future!
On Capitol Hill Tuesday, Dr. Oz was on the hot seat.
I actually do personally believe in the items that I talk about in the show. I passionately study them. I recognize that oftentimes they don't have the scientific muster to present as fact.
But that's the whole point. You're presenting it as a doctor.
Dr. Oz, for some reason, he tells people what he believes, whether or not it's based upon any good science. I don't understand how he really can sleep at night doing this.
Oh man, I die. Oh man, the world dies. Oh man, the future! And as I say all this, I piss off the Buddhists on the corner of Hollywood and Highland.
We are here to answer the million-dollar question: can we feed 9 billion people by 2050? And I'll use President Obama's catchphrase: yes, we can.
Yeah, look at this. Look at Dr. Emma. Look, everybody's standing up. Yeah.
A standing ovation after the speech. He told me even Bill Gates sometimes could not get that. So it was really nice. It felt good.
my man?